Blenders. This is Steve, the Bass Guy, with Bass Musician Magazine. This is part 2 of that last segment. So we get a little bit deeper here today because we started talking about using that technique of the right hand, which was using that triplet, tremolo kind of thing that we're doing with those 1, 2, 3, 4, or modulating some different variation of that. So today what we're going to do is we want to go a little bit deeper. We started looking at chords across 4 strings. We started saying, well, we have a minor, we have a dominant, and we have a major. So a minor chord is, if you're not familiar with chords, we need to talk a little bit about it. It's like based off of a minor scale. A dominant is based off of a major scale with a flat seventh, and a major scale is your standard scale. So let's take a look at that real quick. So if we have a major scale, so let's start, we're going to do each of these in the key of C, just to kind of identify what they are before I start throwing them at you. You're like, well, what do they actually mean? So if I say C major, I go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Right? That's a major scale. A major scale has all the elements of a chord inside it. What it does is when we play as a bass player, we're generally thinking about chord tones. So we're thinking root, we're thinking third, we're thinking fifth, we're thinking seventh. So do, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. D, and then we have the octave. So da 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 da. So that's our major seventh chord, arpeggiated. Arpeggiating means that we're playing each note separately versus a chord where we play it all together. Now, as I arpeggiate that, we should still hear the scale inside the chord. That's always a good thing to work on. So when I say that we're playing a major chord, we're focusing on this note here, this note here, this note here, and this note here. So that is a C major seventh chord. Now, when we play chords as bass players, we generally don't play the fifth. We're omitting the fifth in this case. So if I were to take these notes and play a chord using a C, I'm going to play it like that. Now that's, my C is there, and there's my 10th, or my third, my major 10th, my major 7th. I'm playing them across the neck right there. Now, we're starting to venture into an area where chords don't sound very good, especially if we go too low, they end up sounding pretty frumpy. They end up like kind of muddy and they don't sound real good. So we tend to play chords towards the upper register of the neck. We're going to play it, I would say 10 and above is generally where I kind of focus with that. I might drop down a little bit depending on the need, or if I'm doing like simplified voicing, like a shell voicing, like I mentioned earlier in a different lesson that I did a while ago with Bass Musician Magazine. In this case, what we're thinking about is, how do I make those chords, right? How do I make those scales into chords? Well, we started looking at the shapes. Now, they are shapes. And what I did last time, and I'm going to pull this camera in again, is I showed you that first shape. I said, okay, well, this is minor, this is dominant, this is major, right? In this case, we're thinking, okay, well, I have my G major, I'm doing a G major chord, so it's a G major scale. So that should sound like my G. Now, I may not use this all the time, but it's good to have the understanding. So if I go, I want to play through some chords on bass, and I want to get them in my ear because I just want to play them or I have an idea, it's a great opportunity. In this case, what we want to do is we want to take those ideas. So I said, we said that C major scale. So that's a C major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And I said, well, we have a dominant scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, do. I have a flat seventh there. And that flat seventh, when I play it here, is going to be represented like this. So there's my dominant chord versus my major chord, which is that. Let's do that again so you hear it. There's a difference in there. There's a slightly different rub. And then we said we have the minor. That's a natural minor. So I play that natural minor C there. Sounds like that. We can simplify this into shapes. And it's good to know the theory that goes into it, but it's not always necessary immediately. So if we had a set of changes, say we take a bunch of shapes. Now, I only gave it to you when we're skipping a string. So we're doing the A, we're doing the E, and we're doing it on the D and the G. there are times that we might not play it as a tenth and we might play it as a third. So for instance, if I play a chord on say A, D, and G, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to move my third to a tenth. I'm going to play it next to it. So if I were to play a C minor chord, it's going to look like this. I have my C, I have my E, and I have my B flat. So I'm doing that as a seventh versus a triad. So I'm playing it like this. So it's almost like I'm going middle finger, first finger, third finger. So I have a shape that looks like that. When I make it a dominant chord, so I'm going root, minor third, seventh. If it becomes dominant, I'm going to move this one up. So I'm going to actually keep that B where it is. I'm going to move my third to E. There's my dominant. And then if I were to make this major, I slide this one up another half step. So the whole process is like this. Minor, dominant, major. So when we kind of put these together, we might say, well, we have two different styles of chord voicings. We have it where we're playing on the lower string and then we're skipping a string, which is going to make the string that we're skipped, we're putting that as a tenth on the top string. So for instance, here's my minor, my dominant, and my major. So here when we look at this chord, we have the minor. So my tenth is on the top, that's my minor tenth. I move it up, that becomes dominant. So now my third is raised, my seventh is still low, which is F, and then I raise that up, and that becomes F sharp, because I'm in the key of G there. So I have that shape across those four strings. This becomes a little bit more hard to think through at first, but if you kind of simplify and we kind of work through it, we can say, well, and just kind of play with those voicings. And what I'm doing there is 4 chords. Let me break that down. So we want to go back through the first part of this lesson, which was really just getting those first shapes off with the 4, like the lower string, skipping a string, and then getting those voicings with the 3 strings next to each other. Where you have the minor, dominant, major, minor, dominant, major. And almost the best way to do it is, I would say, is to lay out the graph of the neck, because what happens down below, we're just going to call it the octave above, and just place your fingers on and strike each string separately. Move them, try them separately again, then pluck them together with that free stroke, and then move it up again, try it again. Take your time with this. It's not simple. It takes a little bit to get used to, especially because we're trying to get a bunch of things working at once. This is kind of intermediate. But if you played around with chords, you should kind of start to recognize what this is, and it's a great way to supplement your practice routine. So if you wanted to add some chords to what you're playing, it's helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at stevethebassguy@yahoo. Which brings me up, if you enjoyed this lesson and you like our content, please remember to smash that subscribe button so that you get up-to-date videos from Bass Musician Magazine. And if you enjoyed this content, again, please feel free to reach out to me. As I said earlier, it's stevethebassguy@yahoo.com, and I am Steve Rosati, your coach today in all things bass. So I hope this doesn't stump you. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to walk you through it. Again, Steve the Bass Guy. Thank you.